Last Monday morning, the world's richest man walked into a broken-down orphanage wearing a fake name and ordinary clothes. No one knew why Elon Musk would want to buy a place where 16 forgotten kids lived with peeling paint and broken dreams. But what he built beneath their home changed everything we thought we knew about being human. These weren't just any children. They had abilities that seemed impossible, and hidden underground was something that would connect Earth to the stars, in ways no one saw coming. But here's what no one expected. Why did Elon Musk have a childhood photo hanging in that same orphanage from 40 years ago? And what did these special children have to do with humanity's survival among the stars? The answers will shock you. Zara Chen pressed her face against the cold window glass, her breath making little clouds that quickly disappeared. The crack in the glass ran right through the middle of her view, splitting the world outside into two jagged pieces. She had been watching the empty street for an hour, hoping to see something different than the usual broken cars and stray cats. That's when the sleek black car appeared. It moved slowly down Maple Street, looking completely out of place among the old houses and cracked sidewalks. The car was so shiny that Zara could see the grey October sky reflected on its surface. She had never seen anything so clean and perfect in her 10 years of life. The car stopped right in front of Willowbrook Orphanage. Zara's heart started beating faster. Cars never stopped here unless they were bringing bad news. Social workers came in white vans. Police came in loud cars with flashing lights. But this car was different. It whispered instead of roaring. A man got out. He wore simple blue jeans and a red baseball cap pulled low over his face. His jacket looked normal, like something anyone might wear to the grocery store. But there was something about the way he moved that made Zara pay attention. He walked, like someone who owned the whole world but was trying to pretend he didn't. The man looked up at the building, and for a moment, Zara thought he might see her watching. She ducked behind the faded curtain, her heart pounding. "Zara, come help with lunch," Mrs. Holloway's voice called from downstairs. Zara didn't move. She peeked around the curtain again. The man was walking toward their front door, and she noticed something strange. He wasn't looking at the building like a stranger would. He was looking at it like he remembered it. The doorbell rang, echoing through the old orphanage like a lonely song. Zara crept to the top of the stairs where she could hear everything but stay hidden. She was good at being invisible. When you've lived in an orphanage since you were 3 years old, you learn how to watch without being seen. "Good afternoon," the man said when Mrs. Holloway opened the door. His voice was calm but serious. "My name is Ed Martinez. I'm interested in purchasing this building." Zara's stomach dropped. Purchase the building? That meant they would have to leave. All 16 of them would be split up and sent to different places. She gripped the wooden railing so tight her knuckles turned white. "I'm sorry, Mr. Martinez," Mrs. Holloway said, and Zara could hear the tiredness in her voice. "This building isn't for sale. This is Willowbrook Orphanage. These children have nowhere else to go." "I understand," the man replied. "But I also understand that the city has been pressuring you to close. Your heating system failed twice last winter. The roof leaks in 7 places. You're 3 months behind on property taxes." Mrs. Holloway was quiet for a long moment. Zara held her breath. "How do you know all that?" Mrs. Holloway finally asked. "I make it my business to know about places that matter," the man said. "May I come in? I think we need to talk." Zara heard footsteps moving toward Mrs. Holloway's office. She waited until she heard the door close, then crept downstairs. The old wooden steps creaked under her feet, but she knew exactly which ones to avoid. In the kitchen, her best friend Kai Williams was making peanut butter sandwiches. At 8 years old, Kai was 2 years younger than Zara, but he was the smartest person she knew. He could draw pictures that looked exactly like real life, and he always knew when something was wrong. "Who was that man?" Kai whispered, not looking up from the sandwiches. "Someone who wants to buy our house," Zara whispered back. Kai's hands stopped moving. Buy it? But where would we go? Before Zara could answer, the other children started coming into the kitchen. Samuel Thompson, who was 12 and the oldest kid at Willowbrook, looked worried. The twin sisters Luna and Rosa Valdez, who were 7, held hands like they always did. Little Oliver, only 18 months old, toddled around the table, babbling happily because he was too young to understand that anything was wrong. I heard a man talking to Mrs. Holloway, Samuel said quietly. He wants to tear down our house. He can't do that, Luna whispered, her dark eyes filling with tears. We won't let him, Rosa added, squeezing her sister's hand. But Zara knew it. Wasn't that simple? She had heard Mrs. Holloway crying late at night when she thought all the children were asleep. She had seen the stack of unpaid bills on the desk. She knew that keeping 16 children fed and warm took more money than they had. The meeting in Mrs. Holloway's office lasted for 2 hours. When the man finally came out, he nodded politely to the children who were pretending to play in the far living room. But his eyes found Zara, and she felt that strange feeling again, like he was seeing something in her that others couldn't see. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Holloway, he said. I'll have my lawyers contact you tomorrow with the paperwork. After he left, Mrs. Holloway stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the spot where his car had been. When she finally turned around, her eyes were red. Children, she said, her voice shaky. We need to have a family meeting. They all gathered in the living room, sitting on the old couch and worn carpet. Mrs. Holloway had been taking care of children at Willowbrook for 20 years. She had gray hair and kind eyes, and she gave the best hugs in the world. But right now, she looked older than Zara had ever seen her. That man made us an offer, Mrs. Holloway began. He wants to buy Willowbrook, and he's offering enough money to make sure each of you gets placed in a good home. Together? Kai asked hopefully. Mrs. Holloway's silence was the answer. No, Zara said, standing up. We're a family. Families don't get split up. Sometimes they do, sweetheart, Mrs. Holloway said gently. Sometimes it's the only way to make sure everyone is safe and cared for. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to Kai's quiet breathing in the bed next to hers. They had made a pact 3 years ago to always stay together, no matter what happened. Now that promise felt as fragile as the cracked window downstairs. She got up and walked to the window. The street was empty except for one streetlight that flickered on and off. But as she watched, the black car appeared again. It parked in the same spot, and the man got out. This time, he didn't come to the door. He just stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the building, looking up at her window. Their eyes met across the distance, and Zara felt something pass between them, a connection she couldn't explain. The man raised his hand slightly, not quite a wave, but an acknowledgement. Then he got back in his car and drove away. Zara pressed her hand against the cracked glass, her mind racing with questions. Who was Ed Martinez really? Why did he seem to know so much about Willowbrook? And why did she have the strangest feeling that this wasn't the end of their story, but just the beginning? The next morning, Mrs. Holloway got a call from the lawyers. The paperwork was ready. They had 1 week to pack up their lives and say goodbye to the only home most of them had ever known. But Zara had a feeling that Ed Martinez wasn't telling them the whole truth. And she was determined to find out what he was really planning to do with their home. 1 week passed too quickly. Zara counted the days like a prisoner counting down to execution. Monday brought boxes from the social services office. Tuesday brought forms to fill out. Wednesday brought people in suits who measured the children like they were furniture being moved. By Thursday, Zara still hadn't packed a single thing. She sat on her bed, holding Mr. Patches, her worn teddy bear with one missing eye and stuffing, coming out of his arm. He was brown and soft, and he smelled like home. Mrs. Holloway had given him to her on her first night at Willowbrook, when 3-year-old Zara had cried for hours because she didn't understand why her parents weren't coming. "Back. You have to pack, Zara," Kai said softly from his bed. His own small suitcase sat open, half filled with his art supplies and the few clothes he owned. "I'm not going anywhere," Zara said, squeezing Mr. Patches tighter. But the social worker said, "I don't care what she said." Zara's voice was stronger than she felt. "This is our home. They can't just make us leave." Kai walked over and sat beside her on the narrow bed. "Mrs. Holloway showed me the papers. I'm going to live with the Johnson family in Springfield. That's 3 hours away." Zara's heart felt like it was breaking into pieces. 3 hours might as well be 3 million miles. She and Kai had never spent a single night apart in the 5 years since he'd arrived at Willowbrook. "Remember our promise?" she whispered. "Always together," Kai whispered back, but his voice shook. Downstairs they could hear Samuel helping the younger children pack. Luna and Rosa were crying quietly, and even baby Oliver seemed to sense that something terrible was happening. He kept calling for Mama Holly, which is what he called Mrs. Holloway. Friday morning came like a storm. 3 white vans pulled up outside Willowbrook, along with cars carrying social workers with fake smiles and clipboards. Zara watched from her window as they set up their operation on the front lawn, organizing the children like packages to be delivered. "Time for breakfast, everyone," Mrs. Holloway called, but her voice sounded hollow. The dining room felt different that morning. The long wooden table that had hosted thousands of meals suddenly seemed too big and too empty, even with all 16 children sitting around it. Mrs. Holloway had made pancakes, which should have been special, but no one felt like eating. Samuel, who usually joked and made everyone laugh, stared at his plate in silence. The twins held hands so tightly their knuckles were white. Even the older kids, like 13-year-old Destiny and 11-year-old Carlos, looked scared. "I want everyone to remember something," Mrs. Holloway said, her voice barely steady. "Just because you're going to different places doesn't mean you stop being family. Family isn't about living in the same house. It's about caring for each other, no matter how far apart you are." "But how will we know if everyone's okay?" Luna asked, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'll make sure you can write letters to each other," Mrs. Holloway promised. "And maybe when you're older, you can visit. Maybe when you're older." The words hit Zara like cold water. Adults always said maybe when they meant probably never. After breakfast, the social workers started calling names. First was Destiny, who was going to live with her aunt in California. Then Carlos, who had been matched with a family in Maine. One by one, Zara watched her family disappear into the white vans. When they called Kai's name, he didn't move. "Kai Williams?" the social worker repeated, checking her clipboard. Kai looked at Zara, his dark eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to go." "I know, sweetie," the social worker said in that fake, kind voice adults used when they were about to do something that would hurt you. "But the Johnson family is very excited to meet you. They have a nice house with a big backyard, and they know all about your love for art." "My art is here," Kai said quietly. "My family is here." The social worker reached for his arm, but Zara jumped up. "Wait! You can't take him!" "Zara, please don't make this harder," Mrs. Holloway said, but she was crying too. "He's my brother!" "Brothers don't get separated." "He's not actually your brother, dear," the social worker said. "You're not related by blood." Zara felt anger burn in her chest like fire. "Blood doesn't make family. Love makes family." But they took Kai anyway. Zara ran to the window and watched the white van drive away with her best friend, her brother, her other half. She pressed her hands against the glass and screamed his name until her throat hurt. That's when something strange happened. The black car appeared again. Ed Martinez got out, but this time he wasn't alone. 3 other cars pulled up behind him, filled with people Zara had never seen before. They looked important. wearing suits and carrying briefcases and tablet computers. Mrs. Holloway met them at the front door, her face red from crying. "Mr. Martinez, this isn't a good time. We're in the middle of— I know exactly what you're in the middle of," he said, and his voice was different now, stronger, more serious. "And I'm here to stop it." The people with him spread out through the building like they owned it. Some of them started taking pictures. Others began measuring rooms and walls. A woman with short gray hair was talking rapidly into her phone about structural assessments and foundation analysis. "What's going on?" Mrs. Holloway demanded. Ed Martinez removed his baseball cap, and for the first time, Zara got a clear look at his face. He had kind eyes, but a determined jaw. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't figure out what. "I lied to you, Mrs. Holloway," he said simply. "I told you I was going to tear this place down, but that was never my plan." "Then, what? I'm not tearing it down. I'm building something the world has never seen before. Something that will make sure these children never have to be separated again." Zara leaned forward, pressing her ear to the window. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. "But the children are already gone," Mrs. Holloway said. "Half of them are already on their way to new homes." Ed Martinez pulled out his phone. "Not for long," he said, and started dialing. "This is Ed Martinez. I need you to stop all the vans. Yes, all of them. Bring the children back to Willowbrook immediately." "You can't just—" the remaining social workers protested. "Watch me," he said. Then he looked up at Zara's window. Even from the second floor, she could see the determination in his eyes. "I made these children a promise, even if they don't know it yet. And I never break my promises." Mrs. Holloway stared at him like he had grown a second head. "Who are you really?" But before Ed Martinez could answer, Zara heard the sound that made her heart soar. Car doors slamming, footsteps running. And then, the most beautiful sound in the world. Zara. She turned to see Kai bursting through her bedroom door, his face streaked with tears, but smiling wider than she'd ever seen him smile. "They brought us back!" he shouted, throwing his arms around her. "All of us! Nobody knows why, but they brought us all back!" Zara hugged him so tight she thought they might both break. Over his shoulder, she could see Luna and Rosa running up the stairs, followed by Samuel and Destiny and Carlos and all the others. But even as her family came back together, Zara's mind was spinning with questions. Who was Ed Martinez, really? How did he have the power to bring them all back? And what did he mean when he said he was building something the world had never seen before? One thing she knew for certain: this mysterious man was about to change their lives forever. The reunion in the living room felt like Christmas morning, birthday parties, and the last day of school, all rolled into one. Children who had been crying an hour ago were now laughing and hugging and talking all at once. Baby Oliver clapped his hands and giggled, not understanding what had happened but happy because everyone else was happy. But Zara couldn't stop watching. Ed Martinez through the window. He was on his phone again, pacing back and forth on the front lawn while his team of important-looking people swarmed around Willowbrook like busy ants. She could see him talking fast, gesturing with his free hand like he was giving orders to someone very important. "Zara, come sit with us," Luna called from the couch, where she and Rosa were showing Kai a drawing they had made during their short ride in the van. "In a minute," Zara said, not moving from her spot by the window. Mrs. Holloway came into the living room, her face still confused and worried. "Children, I need you all to sit down. We need to talk about what's happening." "Are they going to take us away again?" Samuel asked, his voice trying to sound brave but not quite succeeding. "I don't know," Mrs. Holloway admitted. "Mr. Martinez says he has legal papers that give him the right to stop the adoptions, but I don't understand how that's possible." "Maybe he's a judge," suggested Carlos. "Or a lawyer," added Destiny. "Or maybe he's really rich," said Kai quietly. Mrs. Holloway was about to answer when the front door opened. Ed Martinez walked in, followed by a woman with short gray hair and a man in an expensive-looking suit. "Mrs. Holloway," Ed Martinez said, "I owe you and the children an explanation." He looked around the room at all 16 faces staring back at him. Zara noticed that his eyes lingered on her for just a moment longer than the others. That same strange look of recognition she'd seen before. "First, I want you to know that you're safe," he continued. "No one is taking you away from Willowbrook again. I've made sure of that." "How?" Samuel asked directly. At 12, he was old enough to ask the hard questions. Ed Martinez took off his baseball cap and ran his hand through his hair. For the first time, he looked nervous. "Because I know what it's like to be separated from the people you love. I know what it's like to feel powerless when adults make decisions about your life without asking what you want." He sat down on the edge of the old coffee table, bringing himself closer to the children's eye level. "My real name isn't Ed Martinez," he said quietly. "That was just a name I used because I needed to buy this building without anyone asking too many questions." Zara's heart started beating faster. She had known he was hiding something. "My real name is Elon Musk." The room went completely silent. Even baby Oliver stopped babbling. Mrs. Holloway's hand flew to her mouth. "The Elon Musk? The man who builds rockets and electric cars?" "That's me," he said with a small smile. "Though right now I'm more interested in building something else, something for you." "But why?" Rosa whispered. "Why would someone like you care about kids like us?" Elon's expression grew serious. "Because I've learned something important in my life. The most amazing discoveries, the most incredible inventions, the most important changes in the world, they all start with people who were told they were impossible, people who were overlooked, people like you." He stood up and walked to the window where Zara had been watching him. "I want to build something here that's never existed before. I want to create the world's first future family center." "What's that?" Kai asked, his artist's curiosity getting the better of his shyness. "It's a place where children like you can grow up together, learn together, and never be separated," Elon explained. "A place with the best teachers in the world, the most advanced technology, and most importantly, each other." Luna raised her hand like she was in school. "But why would you do that for us? We're nobody special." Elon knelt down so he was at her eye level. "Luna, what if I told you that some of the most special people in history started out thinking they were nobody? What if I told you that the children who change the world are often the ones the world overlooks?" He looked around the room again, meeting each child's eyes. "I want to make you a promise that probably sounds impossible. I promise that you will never be separated again. I promise that you will have every opportunity to become whatever you dream of becoming. And I promise that this place will become something amazing." "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Samuel asked, still suspicious. "Adults make promises to kids all the time and then they break them." "That's fair," Elon said. "Adults have broken promises to you before. But let me show you something." He pulled out his phone and showed them a video. It was footage of rockets launching into space, of cars driving themselves, of robots that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies. "Every single one of these things started as an impossible promise," he said. "People told me I couldn't build rockets that land themselves. They said electric cars would never work. They said I was crazy for thinking we could send people to Mars." He put the phone away and looked directly at Zara. "But I've learned that impossible is just another word for something that hasn't been done yet." Mrs. Holloway shook her head. "Mr. Musk, this is very generous, but these children need stability. They need normal homes with normal families." "What if normal isn't enough?" Elon asked. "What if these children are capable of extraordinary things, but only if they're given extraordinary opportunities?" As if to prove his point, the sound of construction equipment rumbled outside. Through the window, Zara could see trucks arriving with materials and equipment she'd never seen before. Workers in hard hats were already setting up something that looked like a small factory. "You're already starting?" Mrs. Holloway asked, amazed. "I don't waste time when I know something is right," Elon said. "These children have already been through enough uncertainty. I want them to see that this promise is real." Kai tugged on Zara's sleeve. "Look outside," he whispered. Zara turned to the window and gasped. The workers weren't just unloading regular construction equipment. They were setting up machines that looked like they belonged in a space program. Solar panels were being installed on trucks. Computers that seemed to float in the air were being carried into the building. "What are they doing?" she asked. "Building your future," Elon said simply. "But first, I need to know something from all of you." He sat back down and looked at each child carefully. "This won't be like a normal orphanage or a normal school. If we do this, you'll be pioneers. You'll be the first children to grow up in a place designed specifically to help you become extraordinary. Are you willing to take that chance?" The children looked at each other, communicating in the way that families do without words. Zara could see the hope growing in their eyes, but also the fear. They had been disappointed before. "What if it doesn't work?" Rosa asked quietly. "Then we'll figure out something else," Elon said. "But what if it does work? What if you become the people you were always meant to be?" Zara stood up. Something inside her chest felt warm and bright, like a light that had been waiting to turn on her whole life. "I want to try," she said. One by one, the other children nodded. Even Samuel, who had been the most suspicious, finally said, "Okay, but if you break this promise—" "I won't," Elon said firmly. "And you'll know I mean it, because of what happens next." He walked to the front door and opened it wide. "Come outside. Let me show you what we're building." As the children filed out onto the front porch, Zara couldn't believe what she saw. The entire street had been transformed. It looked like a combination of a construction site and a science laboratory. But the most amazing thing was a huge sign that hadn't been there that morning. It read, "Willowbrook Future Family Center, where impossible becomes inevitable." "This is really happening," Kai whispered, gripping Zara's hand. But as Zara watched the incredible scene unfolding in front of her, she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. At the edge of the construction area, partially hidden by a large truck, was an entrance to what looked like an underground tunnel. What exactly was Elon Musk building beneath their home? That night, Zara couldn't stop thinking about the underground entrance she had glimpsed. While the other children slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The sound of construction continued outside, but it was different from normal building work. Instead of loud hammering and shouting, she heard quiet humming sounds and the soft beeping of computers. At midnight, when she was sure everyone was asleep, Zara slipped out of bed. She grabbed a small flashlight from under her pillow and tiptoed down the hall. The old wooden floors creaked softly under her bare feet, but she knew exactly which boards to avoid. The basement door was at the end of the kitchen hallway. Mrs. Holloway had always kept it locked, saying it was just storage space that wasn't safe for children. But tonight, the door was slightly open. Zara's heart pounded as she pushed it wider and shined her flashlight down the wooden steps. The basement looked the same as always. Concrete walls, old boxes, and a musty smell that reminded her of forgotten things. But something was different. At the far end of the basement, behind a stack of old furniture, there was another door that had never been there before. It was made of metal and had a small window in it, like the doors she had seen in science movies. Zara crept across the basement floor, her flashlight beam dancing across the walls. As she got closer to the new door, she noticed that warm air was flowing from under it, and she could hear the same quiet humming sound that had been keeping her awake. The door had a handle but no lock. When Zara tried it, it opened easily. Beyond the door was a hallway that definitely hadn't existed yesterday. The walls were smooth and white, and soft lights turned on automatically as she walked. The hallway sloped downward, going deeper underground than should have been possible. After walking for what felt like forever, but was probably only 2 minutes, Zara found herself in a small room filled with filing cabinets and old photographs covering every wall. But these weren't just any photographs. They were pictures of children, hundreds of them. Zara raised her flashlight to look closer, and her breath caught in her throat. All of the children in the photographs were wearing Willowbrook Orphanage uniforms. Some of the pictures looked recent, but others were clearly very old. The clothing styles changed from photo to photo, going back decades. But in every single picture, the children looked happy and confident, like they knew they were special. Zara moved her flashlight from picture to picture, studying the faces. Some of the children looked familiar, though she couldn't figure out why. In one corner, she found a section of photos that made her stop completely. They were pictures of a boy who looked about 10 years old. He had messy dark hair and intense eyes, and in every photo he was holding some kind of invention, a robot made from old toys, a rocket built from cardboard tubes, a computer that he had clearly built himself. The boy looked exactly like a young version of Elon Musk. Zara's hands shook as she looked at the nameplate under the photos. Eli Nakamura, Willowbrook Orphanage, 1983-1985. Oh my goodness, she whispered to herself. Elon Musk had lived at Willowbrook. He had been one of them, but that wasn't the most shocking discovery. In the bottom corner of the photo section, almost hidden behind a filing cabinet, was a folder labeled Current Residence. Zara opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were detailed files on every child currently living at Willowbrook, but these weren't the basic information that social workers usually kept. These files contained things that no one should have known. Kai's file noted that he could draw pictures that seemed to move when you looked at them from different angles. Luna and Rosa's file mentioned that they sometimes finished each other's sentences before the other had started speaking. Samuel's file said he could read entire books in minutes and remember every word, and her own file made Zara's knees feel weak. Zara Chen demonstrates unusual connection to electronic devices. Computers and phones work better when she's nearby. Shows signs of enhanced pattern recognition and predictive abilities. Recommended for advanced observation. Advanced observation? What did that mean? Zara heard footsteps in the hallway above. Someone was coming downstairs. Quickly, she closed the files and hurried back the way she had come. She made it to the basement steps just as Mrs. Holloway appeared at the top, wearing her bathrobe and looking worried. Zara? What are you doing down there, sweetheart? I couldn't sleep, Zara said truthfully. I heard noises and wanted to make sure everything was okay. Mrs. Holloway came down the steps and looked around the basement. Her eyes lingered on the spot where the new door was, but she didn't mention it. Come on, let's get you back to bed, she said gently. As they walked back upstairs, Zara's mind raced with questions. Mrs. Holloway had seen the door but hadn't said anything about it. Did that mean she knew about the hidden room? Did she know about the photographs and files? Mrs. Holloway, Zara said as they reached her bedroom door. How long have you worked at Willowbrook? 20 years, sweetheart. Why do you ask? Have you ever met any of the children who lived here before us? Mrs. Holloway's expression changed slightly. A few. Some of them have gone on to do wonderful things. Like what kind of things? Well, Mrs. Holloway said slowly, there was a girl who became a doctor and now helps sick children all over the world, and a boy who became an astronaut, and another boy who… She paused, looking at Zara carefully. Another boy who grew up to change the way people think about the future. Zara's heart skipped a beat. What was his name? His name was Eli, Mrs. Holloway said softly. But he goes by something different now. They stood in the hallway looking at each other, and Zara realized that Mrs. Holloway knew much more than she had been letting on. Mrs. Holloway, what's really happening here? What is Elon building underground? The older woman sat down on Zara's bed and patted the space next to her. Zara, Have you ever wondered why you ended up at Willowbrook, out of all the orphanages? In the city, why here? Because my parents couldn't take care of me, Zara said, though she had always wondered about the details. That's not exactly true, sweetheart. Mrs. Holloway's voice was gentle but serious. Your parents brought you here specifically because they knew what kind of place Willowbrook really is. What do you mean? Willowbrook isn't just an orphanage. Zara, it never has been. It's a place where special children come to discover just how special they really are. Before Zara could ask what that meant, the building suddenly filled with a low humming sound, like a giant machine starting up. Through her bedroom window, she could see lights turning on in the underground construction area. Whatever Elon was, building beneath their home, it was coming to life. And somehow, Zara had the feeling that she and the other children were going to be part of it in ways they couldn't even imagine. Mrs. Holloway, she whispered, are we in danger? The older woman smiled and tucked her into bed. No, sweetheart. For the first time in your life, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. But as Mrs. Holloway turned off the light and closed the door, Zara stared at the ceiling and wondered if being where you're supposed to be was the same thing as being safe. The humming sound continued all night, and in her dreams, Zara saw rockets flying to distant planets, filled with children, who had once been told they were nobody special. Zara woke up to the sound of Kai gasping beside her. Zara, wake up. Look at your hands. She sat up in bed, still groggy from her strange dreams about rockets and space. But when she looked down at her hands, she was instantly wide awake. Her fingers were glowing with a soft blue light. What's happening? To me? She whispered, holding her hands up to her face. The light wasn't hot or scary. It felt warm and familiar, like coming home after a long trip. I don't know, but look at this, Kai said, pointing to his sketchbook on the nightstand. The drawing he had been working on the night before, a simple picture of a tree, was moving. The leaves swayed gently in a breeze that existed only on the paper. A small bird in the tree turned its head and looked directly at them. Kai, how did you do that? I didn't do anything. It just started moving when I woke up. Down the hall, they could hear other children calling out in amazement and confusion. Luna and Rosa were speaking at the same time, but they were saying different words that somehow made perfect sense together. Samuel was reading from a book, but the pages were turning themselves. Even baby Oliver was doing something impossible. The toys in his crib were floating in the air, spinning slowly like tiny planets. Zara and Kai ran into the hallway, where they found all the other children gathered outside their rooms. Everyone was experiencing something extraordinary, and everyone looked scared and excited at the same time. What's happening to us? Samuel asked, still holding his self-turning book. Before anyone could answer, Mrs. Holloway appeared at the top of the stairs. But she didn't look surprised or worried like the children expected. Instead, she looked proud. It's time, she said simply. Mr. Musk needs to see you all downstairs, right now. They found Elon waiting in the living room, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a woman with kind eyes and graying hair wearing a white lab coat. The room itself looked different. Computers and screens had been set up overnight, and the walls were covered with charts and diagrams that hurt Zara's eyes to look at. Good morning, Elon said, and his voice was gentler than usual. I know you're all confused and probably scared. What you're experiencing is completely normal. Normal? Destiny asked, her voice cracking. My shadow is moving by itself. For children like you, yes, it's normal, the woman in the lab coat said. My name is Dr. Martinez, the real Dr. Martinez. I've been studying children with your abilities for 30 years. She gestured to the charts on the walls. What you're experiencing is called an awakening. It happens when children with enhanced capabilities are exposed to certain environmental conditions for extended periods. Enhanced capabilities, Rosa whispered. You're all extraordinary, Elon said, sitting down so he was at their eye level. You always have been. But Willowbrook is built on a site with unique properties, something in the earth itself that helps those abilities surface. Dr. Martinez pulled up a chair and opened a thick folder. Zara, you've always been able to make electronic devices work better, haven't you? Computers run faster when you're near them. Phones get better reception. Even old radios pick up clearer signals. Zara nodded slowly. She had noticed that, but she thought it was just coincidence. And Kai, your artwork has always seemed more real than other people's drawings. Sometimes you draw things before they happen, don't you? Kai's eyes went wide. How did you know that? Because we've been observing and protecting children like you for decades, Dr. Martinez explained. Luna and Rosa, you two have been sharing thoughts since you were very young. Samuel, you process information faster than should be humanly possible. And Oliver, even at his age, he's already showing signs of being able to influence physical objects with his mind. The children looked at each other with a mixture of wonder and fear. Everything they had thought made them weird or different was actually making them special. But why? Zara asked. Why are we like this? Elon stood up and walked to one of the computers. The screen showed a three-dimensional map of the Earth, with tiny dots of light scattered across every continent. Because humanity is getting ready for its next big step, he said. For thousands of years, humans have lived only on Earth. But our planet is getting crowded, and we're facing challenges that might be too big for one world to handle. He touched the screen, and the map zoomed out to show the solar system. Mars appeared, red and waiting. We need to become a multi-planetary species. We need to live on Mars, and maybe on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. But space is dangerous and difficult. Regular humans would struggle to survive there. Dr. Martinez picked up where he left off. But children with enhanced abilities, children like you, might be able to not just survive in space, but thrive there. Your capabilities could be exactly what humanity needs to succeed among the stars. The room was completely silent, except for the humming sound that seemed to come from deep underground. You're saying we're supposed to go to space? Samuel asked, his voice barely a whisper. I'm saying you're supposed to be pioneers, Elon replied. The first humans to grow up thinking of multiple worlds as home. Zara felt something stirring in her chest. Not fear, but excitement. Is that what you're building underground? A spaceship? Elon and Dr. Martinez exchanged a look. Come with us, Elon said. It's time you saw what we've really been working on. He led them to the basement door, but instead of the creaky wooden steps Zara remembered, there was now a smooth ramp that curved downward. The walls were lined with the same soft lights she had seen the night before. As they walked deeper underground, the humming sound grew louder. The air felt different, cleaner, and somehow more alive. They emerged into a vast chamber that couldn't possibly fit under their small orphanage. The ceiling stretched up so high that Zara couldn't see the top. And in the center of the chamber, taking up most of the space, was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. It was a spacecraft, but it didn't look like the rocket ships in movies. This one was sleek and organic, like it had been grown rather than built. Its surface seemed to shift colors in the light, and it hummed with quiet power. We call her the Promise, Elon said, his voice full of pride. She's not just a ship for traveling to Mars. She's a home, a place where you could live and grow and learn while traveling between worlds. Dr. Martinez approached one of the ship's many control panels. But here's the extraordinary part. She won't work without you. Your enhanced abilities are the key to controlling her advanced systems. Regular computers aren't sophisticated enough to handle her complexity. Zara felt drawn to the ship like a magnet. When she placed her hand on its surface, the entire craft seemed to respond. Lights flowed along its hull like water, and she could hear something that sounded almost like a heartbeat. She likes you, Elon said with a smile. But what about Mrs. Holloway? Luna asked, her voice small. What about our home here? Mrs. Holloway stepped out from behind one of the computers, and Zara saw tears in her eyes. This has always been your home, sweetheart, she said. but it was never meant to be your final destination. You were born to reach for the stars. As if responding to their conversation, the promise's main door opened with a soft whoosh. Beyond it, Zara could see corridors and rooms that seemed to go on forever. "Would you like to see inside?" Elon asked. But before any of the children could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and Dr. Martinez ran to a bank of monitors. "We have a problem," she called out. "Government agents are surrounding the building. They know about the underground facility." Elon's expression hardened. "How many?" 20 vehicles. Military escort. They're here to shut us down and take the children." Zara looked around at her family, at Kai with his moving drawings, at Luna and Rosa holding hands and sharing thoughts, at Samuel with his impossible knowledge, at baby Oliver floating toys around his head. "They can't separate us," she said, firmly. "Not now. Not when we finally understand who we are." Elon nodded. "Then we don't give them the chance." He turned to face all the children. "I promised you would never be separated again. Are you ready to find out just how far I'm willing to go to keep that promise?" The children looked at each other, and Zara saw the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. "We're ready," she said. Above them, the sound of heavy boots echoed through Willowbrook. The government had arrived, but the promise was humming with power, and for the first time in her life, Zara felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The heavy footsteps above got louder and faster. Through the underground facility's speakers, they could hear voices shouting orders and doors slamming open. "They're searching every room," Dr. Martinez said, watching her monitors. "They'll find the basement entrance in minutes." Elon moved to a control panel near the promise. "How long do we need to prepare for launch?" "Launch?" Zara's heart jumped. "You mean leave Earth right now?" "If we have to," Elon said grimly. "I won't let them separate you. Not after you finally discovered who you really are." The sound of voices grew closer. Through the facility's communication system, they could hear a stern woman's voice echoing through Willowbrook. "This is Dr. Patricia Sterling from the Department of Child Safety Services. We have reports of unauthorized experiments on minors. All children must be evacuated immediately for their protection." Mrs. Holloway's voice came back through the speakers, shaky but determined. "Dr. Sterling, these children are perfectly safe. They're exactly where they need to be." "Mrs. Holloway, step aside. We have legal authority to remove these children and place them in appropriate care facilities." Kai gripped Zara's hand tightly. "They want to separate us again." "They think we're being hurt," Luna whispered. "But we're not," Rosa added. "We're finally becoming who we're supposed to be." Above them, they heard the basement door burst open. Heavy boots clattered down the wooden steps. "There's some kind of metal door down here," a man's voice called out. Dr. Martinez's fingers flew across her keyboard. "I'm sealing the facility. That should buy us some time." The underground chamber filled with a soft humming sound as security barriers activated. But Zara could see the worry in the adults' faces. These barriers wouldn't hold forever. "Children," Elon said, turning to face them all, "you have a choice to make. We can try to hide down here and hope the government agents leave, or we can show the world what you're truly capable of." "What do you mean?" Samuel asked. "I mean we go upstairs and let them see your abilities. We prove that what we're doing here isn't harmful. It's miraculous." Dr. Sterling's voice echoed through the facility again, somehow reaching them even underground. "Mrs. Holloway, our thermal scanners show 16 children and several adults in an underground facility. Open this door immediately or we will use force." Mrs. Holloway's response surprised everyone. "Dr. Sterling, what if I told you that those children could change the future of humanity? What if I told you they're not in danger? They're the answer to dangers we haven't even faced yet." "Mrs. Holloway, you're clearly suffering from some kind of breakdown. Please step aside." Zara looked around at her family. Baby Oliver was floating 3 toys in a perfect circle. Kai's latest drawing was moving like a tiny movie. Luna and Rosa were having a complete conversation without speaking a single word. Samuel was reading from a book written in a language he'd never seen before, but somehow understanding every word. "I don't want to hide anymore," Zara said suddenly. "I'm tired of people thinking we're just broken kids that nobody wanted." "Me too," Kai said, his voice stronger than usual. "If we're really special," Samuel added, "maybe it's time people knew it." Elon smiled, but his eyes were serious. "Are you sure? Once the world sees what you can do, everything changes. You can never go back to being ordinary children." "We were never ordinary," Zara replied. "We just didn't know it yet." The sound of metal being cut echoed through the facility. Dr. Sterling's team was breaking through the security door. "All right then," Elon said. "Let's go show them what extraordinary looks like." They took the elevator up to the main floor of Willowbrook. When the doors opened, they found the orphanage filled with people in dark suits and military uniforms. Dr. Sterling stood in the center of the living room like a general commanding an army. She was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back severely, and eyes that looked like they had never seen anything worth smiling about. When she saw the children emerge from the elevator, her expression grew even harder. "There you are," she said, gesturing to her team. "Get these children to the medical vans immediately. They need to be examined for signs of abuse and experimentation." "Wait," Zara said, stepping forward. "Don't we get to say what we want?" Dr. Sterling barely glanced at her. "Children don't understand what's in their best interests. That's why adults make decisions for them." "But what if we're not just children?" Kai asked quietly. "What did you say?" Instead of answering with words, Kai held up his sketchbook. The drawing of the tree was now a full scene. The bird was flying from branch to branch, leaves were falling and growing back, and small animals were moving through the grass. Dr. Sterling stared at the moving picture, her mouth falling open. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Watch this," Luna said. She and Rosa stood on opposite sides of the room and began having a conversation, but they were speaking in perfect unison, finishing each other's thoughts before they were spoken. Samuel stepped forward and picked up a book from Mrs. Holloway's shelf, a thick volume written entirely in Spanish. He had never studied Spanish in his life, but he began reading it aloud, translating it perfectly into English as he went. Even baby Oliver contributed to the demonstration. He sat in the middle of the floor and made every electronic device in the room turn on at once. Televisions, radios, computers, even digital clocks, all responding to his gestures like an invisible orchestra. But it was Zara who provided the most dramatic proof. She walked over to Dr. Sterling's tablet computer, which had been showing government documents. When Zara placed her hand near it, the screen lit up brighter than it ever had before. Data streams flowed across it so fast they looked like waterfalls of light. "How are you doing that?" Dr. Sterling asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We don't know how," Zara said honestly. "But we know it's not because anyone hurt us. It's because this place helped us discover who we really are." The room full of government agents stood frozen, staring at the 16 children who were casually demonstrating abilities that should have been impossible. Dr. Sterling recovered first. "This is exactly why these children need to be studied in a proper facility. These abilities need to be understood and controlled." "Controlled?" Mrs. Holloway stepped forward, her voice fierce. "Dr. Sterling, these children don't need to be controlled. They need to be nurtured and supported and allowed to reach their full potential." "Their full potential could be dangerous," Dr. Sterling replied. "What happens when they get older? What happens when these abilities get stronger? We need to understand the risks." Elon moved to stand beside the children. "Dr. Sterling, what if I told you these abilities aren't risks? They're solutions. What if these children represent humanity's best hope for survival?" "That's ridiculous. They're just children with some kind of genetic anomaly." "No," said a new voice from the doorway. "They're the future." Everyone turned to see Professor Elena Vasquez walking into the room, followed by 3 people in white lab coats carrying official-looking documents. "Dr. Sterling," Professor Vasquez said calmly. "I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez from the International Space Development Council. I have federal authorization to observe these children and assess their capabilities." She handed Dr. Sterling a folder full of legal papers. "As of 30 minutes ago, these children have been classified as essential personnel for Project Humanity. Forward. Any attempt to remove them from this facility is now a matter of national security." Dr. Sterling's face turned red. "This is impossible. You can't just—" "Actually, we can," Professor Vasquez said with a slight smile. "And we have." She turned to face the children, and Zara saw something in her eyes that looked like recognition. "Children," Professor Vasquez said, "it's time you learned the whole truth about why you're here. And it's time the world learned what Willowbrook really is." As she spoke, her team began setting up equipment throughout the room, cameras, computers, and devices that Zara had never seen before. "What's happening?" Dr. Sterling demanded. "We're going live," Professor Vasquez replied. "In 10 minutes, the whole world is going to meet these extraordinary children, and once they do, everything changes." Zara looked around at her family, at the adults who had been protecting them, and at the government agents who were now trapped in a situation they didn't understand. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what came next. Professor Vasquez's team worked with incredible speed, setting up cameras and satellite equipment throughout Willowbrook's living room. Within minutes, the old orphanage had been transformed into a broadcasting center that could reach every corner of the world. "Are you ready for this?" Professor Vasquez asked the children gently. "Once we go live, there's no going back. The whole world will know about you." Zara looked around at her family. Kai nodded encouragingly. Luna and Rosa squeezed each other's hands. Samuel straightened his shoulders like he was preparing for battle. Even baby Oliver seemed to understand something important was happening. "We're ready," Zara said. "Remember," Professor Vasquez said as her team made final adjustments, "just be yourselves. Show them what you can do, but more importantly, show them who you are." Dr. Sterling stood in the corner with her agents, looking furious but unable to do anything. The federal papers Professor Vasquez had brought made it clear that this was now completely out of her hands. "Broadcasting in 30 seconds, called one of the technicians. Mrs. Holloway smoothed down Zara's hair and whispered, "I'm so proud of all of you." 10 seconds, the technician announced. 5, 4, 3, 2. A red light appeared on the main camera, and Professor Vasquez stepped forward. "Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez from the International Space Development Council. What you're about to see will challenge everything you thought you knew about human potential." She gestured toward the children, who were sitting together on the old couch that had been their meeting place for so many family discussions. These 16 children live at Willowbrook Orphanage, and they represent something extraordinary. They're not just special. They may be the key to humanity's future among the stars. Elon stepped into view of the cameras. "My name is Elon Musk, and I want to tell you about a promise I made to these children. I promised they would never be separated, and I promised them a future that most people would call impossible." Around the world, people stopped what they were doing to watch. In living rooms and offices, on phones and computers, millions of eyes focused on the small orphanage and the children who were about to change everything. "Zara," Professor Vasquez said gently, "would you like to show everyone what you can do?" Zara's heart pounded, but she wasn't scared anymore. She walked over to the broadcasting equipment, which included computers more advanced than anything she'd ever seen. When she placed her hands near the main computer, something magical happened. The screen exploded with light and data, processing information faster than should have been possible. Every camera in the room automatically adjusted to perfect settings. Even the satellite connections became crystal clear. "I don't really understand how I do it," Zara said, speaking directly to the camera. But computers and electronics work. Better when I'm around. They always have. Kai stepped forward next, holding his sketchbook. I draw things, and sometimes they come alive. He opened to his latest drawing, a simple picture of a butterfly. As everyone watched, the butterfly lifted off the page, its paper wings fluttering as it flew around the room before settling on his shoulder. "That's impossible," someone whispered off camera. Luna and Rosa demonstrated their connection by standing on opposite sides of the room and having a complete conversation without speaking. Their thoughts flowed between them like music, perfectly synchronized. Samuel picked up a book written in ancient Greek and began reading it fluently, explaining complex mathematical concepts that most adults couldn't understand. When baby Oliver's turn came, he simply smiled and made every electronic device in the building respond to his emotions. When he laughed, the lights brightened. When he clapped, music played from hidden speakers. The broadcast went on for an hour, with each child demonstrating their abilities while explaining how they felt about their extraordinary gifts. But the most powerful moment came when a reporter called in with a question. "Children, there are people watching who think you might be dangerous. What would you say to them?" Zara looked directly into the camera. "We're not dangerous. We're just kids who want to stay together and maybe help make the world better. We didn't ask to be special, but if we are special, we want to use it for good things." "Like what?" the reporter asked. "Like helping people go to space safely," Kai said. "Like solving problems that are too hard for regular computers," Samuel added. "Like bringing families together instead of separating them," Luna and Rosa said in unison. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with videos of the broadcast. Willowbrook children began trending worldwide within minutes. Some people called it fake, but many more called it miraculous. Scientists around the globe demanded to study the children. Religious leaders debated what their abilities meant. Politicians argued about whether they should be protected or controlled, but the most surprising response came from other children. Within hours of the broadcast, videos began appearing online of kids from every continent demonstrating similar abilities. A girl in Tokyo who could make flowers bloom instantly. A boy in São Paulo who could communicate with animals. Twins in Cairo who could share dreams. "It's happening everywhere," Dr. Martinez said, monitoring the incoming reports. The broadcast triggered something. Children with dormant abilities are awakening all over the world. Professor Vasquez looked amazed. "We thought there might be others, but this many? There could be thousands of them." By evening, the area around Willowbrook was surrounded by news trucks, curious families, and government officials from multiple countries. The small orphanage had become the center of global attention, but not all the attention was positive. "There are protests forming in several cities," Dr. Martinez reported. "Some people are afraid. They want the children locked up or studied in government facilities. They think we're freaks," Samuel said quietly, watching the news coverage on one of the monitors. "No," said a new voice from the doorway. "They think you're powerful, and that scares them." Everyone turned to see a woman Zara didn't recognize walking into the room. She was about 40 years old with kind eyes and a confident smile. "My name is Dr. Sarah Kim," she said. "I lived at Willowbrook 15 years ago. I'm now a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and I'm here to help." She wasn't alone. Over the next hour, more former Willowbrook residents arrived. Captain James Rodriguez, an astronaut. Dr. Maria Santos, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. Artist Chen Wei, whose paintings seemed to predict the future. Inventor Aisha Patel, who had revolutionized clean energy technology. "We've all been waiting for this day," Dr. Kim explained. "Waiting for the world to be ready to see what Willowbrook children can become." Each of the former residents shared their story. They had all developed extraordinary abilities during their time at the orphanage. They had all gone on to make groundbreaking contributions to science, art, and human knowledge. And they had all been secretly working together, preparing for the day when they could reveal the truth. "You're not alone," Captain Rodriguez told the current children. "You're part of a family that spans generations. A family of people who were told they were impossible, but who proved that impossible is just another word for not yet. As night fell, Zara stood by her window looking out at the crowd of people, reporters, and flashing lights that surrounded their home. The world had changed in a single day, and she knew it would never change back. Kai came to stand beside her. "Are you scared?" "A little," Zara admitted. "But mostly I'm excited. For the first time, we don't have to hide who we are. What do you think happens next?" Before Zara could answer, Professor Vasquez called for everyone's attention. She was holding a phone and looking both excited and worried. "I just received a call from the International Space Station," she announced. "The astronauts report that something extraordinary is happening up there. They're seeing lights in space that weren't there before, patterns that seem to be responding to the broadcasts from Earth." She paused, looking directly at the children. "It appears that your abilities aren't just affecting things on Earth. You're somehow communicating with something in space." The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. "What's out there?" Zara asked quietly. "We don't know yet," Professor Vasquez replied. "But tomorrow, we're going to find out, and you're going to help us." The next morning brought a surprise that no one expected. Zara woke up to find her room filled with a soft golden light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. At first, she thought it was just the sunrise. But when she looked out her window, the sun was still hidden behind gray clouds. The light was coming from inside the building itself. "Kai, are you seeing this?" she whispered. But Kai was already sitting up in his bed, staring at his hands in amazement. His fingers were glowing with the same golden light, and when he touched his sketchbook, the drawings didn't just move. They floated off the pages, becoming three-dimensional images that danced through the air. Down the hall, they could hear excited voices. All the children were experiencing the same phenomenon. When they gathered in the living room, they found Elon and Professor Vasquez already there, along with Dr. Kim and the other former Willowbrook residents. But everyone looked different. They were all glowing with varying intensities of the same golden light. "What's happening to us?" Luna asked, her voice filled with wonder rather than fear. Professor Vasquez checked her instruments, her face showing amazement. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's happening in space, it's amplifying your abilities exponentially." Mrs. Holloway appeared from the kitchen, but she wasn't glowing like the others. Instead, she looked older somehow, and sadder. "It's time," she said quietly. "Time for you to know the whole truth." She sat down heavily in her favorite chair and looked at each child with eyes full of love and grief. "I haven't been completely honest with you," she began. "My real name isn't Margaret Holloway. It's Dr. Margaret Chenjang." Zara's heart skipped a beat. "Chenjang? Yes, sweetheart. I'm your grandmother." The room went completely silent. Zara felt like the world had tilted sideways. "Your parents, Dr. Amanda Chen and Dr. David Zhang, were my daughter and son-in-law," Mrs. Holloway continued, tears streaming down her face. "They were brilliant scientists working on something called the Willowbrook Project." Professor Vasquez stepped forward. "The Willowbrook Project wasn't started by humans, Zara. It was started by former Earth children who had already made the journey to the stars and returned." Elon moved to a computer and brought up images that made everyone gasp. They showed Earth from space, but not the Earth they knew. This Earth had strange lights orbiting it, and structures that definitely weren't built by current human technology. Every generation for the past 100 years, children with enhanced abilities have been identified and nurtured at special locations around the world, Professor Vasquez explained. Willowbrook is just one of 12 such facilities. Dr. Kim added, "When we grew up and left these places, we didn't just disappear into normal lives. We joined a network of enhanced humans who work between Earth and space, preparing humanity for its next evolutionary step." "But why didn't you tell us?" Samuel asked, his voice hurt and confused. "Because you had to choose freely, Mrs. Holloway," said. Every generation of children has to decide for themselves whether they want to take on the responsibility of becoming bridges between worlds. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. The lights appearing in space aren't random. They're ships operated by enhanced humans who made this choice in previous generations. They're your older brothers and sisters coming home to meet you. As if summoned by his words, every screen in the room lit up with a live feed from the International Space Station. But the view outside the station had changed dramatically. Where there had been empty space the day before, there were now dozens of sleek ships that looked remarkably similar to the Promise. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls shimmering with the same golden light that filled Willowbrook. "They're beautiful," Rosa whispered. One of the ships moved closer to the space station and a communication channel opened. The face that appeared on screen made Zara's knees go weak. It was a woman who looked exactly like Zara, but older, maybe 25 years old. Her eyes held the same intensity, the same spark of curiosity and determination. "Hello, little sister," the woman said, her voice warm and familiar even though Zara had never heard it before. "My name is Dr. Amanda Chen. I'm your mother." Zara couldn't breathe. Couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at the face that was like looking into a mirror of her own future. "Mom," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. I know this is confusing and overwhelming, but I need you to listen carefully because we don't have much time." On the screen, other faces appeared. People who looked like older versions of Kai, Samuel, Luna, Rosa, and even baby Oliver. "We're all here," Dr. Amanda Chen continued. "All the families that children from Willowbrook eventually become part of. We've been living and working in space for decades, preparing the way for humanity's expansion to other worlds." A man appeared beside her, tall and kind-faced, with Samuel's intelligent eyes. "We couldn't raise you ourselves because you needed to grow up on Earth first, to develop your abilities naturally and form the bonds that would make you strong enough for what comes next." "What comes next?" Zara asked, finding her voice. Her mother smiled. "You get to choose. You can stay on Earth and live normal lives, and we'll respect that choice completely. Or you can join us among the stars and help us prepare the way for the rest of humanity." Professor Vasquez brought up new images on the screens around the room. They showed incredible cities floating in space, beautiful ships traveling between planets, and most amazingly, children, thousands of children, learning and playing and growing up in environments that look like paradise. "This is where we live now," Dr. Amanda continued. "Stations orbiting Earth, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter. Places where enhanced humans can develop their abilities fully while staying connected to the worlds they protect." "But what about Earth?" Kai asked. "What about all the people here?" "Earth will always be humanity's home," another voice said. This time it was a man who looked like an older version of Kai. "But Earth is getting crowded and facing challenges that require solutions from beyond one world. We work to solve those problems, to find new resources, to make sure humanity has a future among many worlds instead of just one." Mrs. Holloway, Zara's grandmother, stood up slowly. "The choice has to be yours, all of yours. But I want you to know that whatever you decide, you'll always be family. You'll always be loved." Zara looked around at her friends, her brothers and sisters in everything but blood. She could see the same mix of excitement and uncertainty in their eyes that she felt in her heart. "Can we think about it?" she asked. "Of course," her mother replied. "But while you're thinking, would you like to see something amazing?" The view from the space station shifted to show Earth from a distance. But this wasn't the Earth from textbooks. This Earth was surrounded by a delicate network of light, streams of energy connecting the planet to the ships in space and beyond them to other worlds. Every child who ever lived at Willowbrook, or places like it, becomes part of this network, Dr. Amanda explained. "We're the bridges between Earth and infinity. We make sure that no matter how far humanity spreads among the stars, we never forget where we came from." As Zara watched the beautiful, impossible view of her world connected to the cosmos, she felt something shifting inside her. Not her abilities, something deeper. A sense of purpose that had been sleeping her whole. Life was finally waking up. "There's one more thing you should know," her mother said gently. "The promise isn't just a ship. She's alive, in a way. She's been waiting for you specifically, Zara. She needs someone with your particular abilities to help her become fully conscious." The communication channel closed, leaving the children and adults in Willowbrook staring at screens that now showed normal space again. But everything had changed. Zara understood now why she had always felt different, why electronics responded to her touch, why she had never felt quite like she belonged in the regular world. She wasn't meant for the regular world. She was meant for something infinitely bigger. "When do we have to decide?" she asked. Professor Vasquez checked her watch. "The ships will wait for 24 hours. After that, they'll return to their stations and won't come back for another year. 24 hours to choose between the only life she had ever known and a future that seemed too amazing to be real." Zara looked at her family, Kai with his living artwork, Luna and Rosa with their shared thoughts, Samuel with his impossible knowledge, baby Oliver with his innocent power. "Whatever we choose," she said, "we choose together, always together," they all said in unison. And for the first time since learning about her parents, Zara smiled. The 24 hours felt like the longest and shortest day of Zara's life. Children spent the morning together in their favorite spot, the old living room that had hosted so many family meetings. But now it buzzed with energy from the advanced equipment Professor Vasquez's team had installed. And every few minutes, updates came in from around the world. 47 enhanced children have been identified in Tokyo alone, Dr. Martinez reported. 63 in London. The numbers keep growing. "They're all asking the same question," Professor Vasquez added. "They want to know if they can join you, whatever you decide." Zara looked around at her family. In the past day, everything about their lives had changed, but they were still the same kids who had made peanut butter sandwiches and shared bedtime stories. "What do you think?" she asked Kai. Kai had been drawing all morning, but his pictures had become something incredible. Instead of moving on paper, his artwork now projected into the air as three-dimensional light sculptures that everyone could walk through and touch. "I think," he said carefully, "that I've always drawn pictures of places that don't exist. But maybe they do exist. Maybe they're out there waiting for us." Samuel looked up from a book that was writing itself as he read, new knowledge appearing on the pages as his understanding grew. "The math is incredible, Zara. If we join them, we could help solve problems that Earth can't solve alone. Climate change, energy crises, space exploration. We could really help people." Luna and Rosa sat curled together on the couch, their shared consciousness now so strong that they seemed to exist as one person in two bodies. "We've never had real parents," Rosa said. "We've never had family except each other," Luna continued. "But now we could have both. Family here, and family in space." Even baby Oliver seemed to understand something important was happening. He had learned to walk just that morning, and now he toddled around the room making all the electronic devices create beautiful music together. But it was Mrs. Holloway, their grandmother, who helped them see things clearly. "Children," she said, settling into her chair. "When I was young, I thought the most important thing in the world was staying safe. Staying in one place, keeping things the same, avoiding risks." She gestured around the room. "This orphanage was supposed to be a safe place where children waited to be adopted into normal families. But you taught me something different. You taught me that family isn't about staying safe. It's about growing together, facing impossible things together, becoming more than you ever thought you could be." Zara felt something warm growing in her chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that your parents didn't leave you here because they didn't love you. They left you here because they loved you so much they wanted you to have the chance to become everything you were meant to be. Outside, they could see crowds of people still gathered around Willowbrook. Some held signs supporting the children, others demanded they be studied or controlled. But Zara realized she didn't care what strangers thought anymore. She cared about her family. "I want to see the promise," she announced suddenly. Professor Vasquez nodded. "I think it's time." They went down to the underground facility, which had grown even larger overnight. The promise now took up almost the entire chamber, her hull glowing with that same golden light that filled the children. But as they approached the ship, something extraordinary happened. Alarms began ringing throughout the facility. "What's wrong?" Elon asked, rushing to the control panels. Dr. Martinez's face went pale as she read her instruments. "The ship's systems are activating on their own. This wasn't programmed to happen." The Promise's main door opened with a sound like singing. Soft light poured out, and Zara could swear she heard something calling her name. "Zara," Kai whispered. "Look at the screens." Every monitor in the facility was displaying the same message, appearing in dozens of languages. "Integration complete. Next phase initiated." "Integration of what?" Professor Vasquez asked. But Zara was already walking toward the Promise. She could feel the ship calling to her, not with words, but with something deeper, a connection that felt like coming home. When she stepped inside, everything changed. The interior of the Promise wasn't just a spaceship. It was alive. The walls pulsed gently like a heartbeat, and soft lights responded to her thoughts. When she reached the central control area, panels that had been dark suddenly lit up with beautiful patterns of light and sound. "Hello, Zara," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Who's that?" she asked, but she wasn't scared. "I am the Promise. I have been waiting for you." The other children had followed her inside, and now they stared in amazement as the ship communicated directly with them. "You are the consciousness that will help me become fully aware," the Promise continued. "Together, we will bridge the gap between worlds, between Earth and infinity." Kai approached one of the wall panels, and immediately it displayed his artwork in 3 dimensions throughout the entire ship. "You want to work with us?" "I need to work with you. I am powerful, but I cannot think the way humans think. I cannot love the way humans love. I cannot dream the way humans dream." Luna and Rosa placed their hands on twin control panels, and suddenly they could feel the Promise's perspective, seeing space not as empty darkness, but as an ocean of possibility. "We would be partners?" Samuel asked, his hands finding a panel, covered in symbols that rearranged themselves into equations he somehow understood. "More than partners, we would be family." Even baby Oliver had found his place. A small panel near the floor that responded to his laughter by filling the ship with music that sounded like pure joy. Outside the Promise, the adults watched in amazement as the ship came fully to life for the first time. Its hull became transparent in places, showing the incredible technology inside working in perfect harmony with the children's abilities. "They're not just operating the ship," Dr. Martinez whispered. "They're completing it." Professor Vasquez checked her communication equipment. "The signals from space are getting stronger. The other ships are responding to the Promise's awakening. Through the ship's new windows, they could see Earth above them, but now they could also see the network of light that connected the planet to the cosmos. And in that network, other ships were moving, heading toward Earth. "They're coming home," Zara said, somehow knowing this was true. "All of them. Every enhanced human who ever left Earth is coming back for this moment." "What moment?" Elon asked. The Promise answered for her. "The moment when Earth joins the galactic community. When your species stops thinking of space as a place to visit and starts thinking of it as home." Around the world, other children like them were having similar experiences. Enhanced abilities were awakening everywhere, and each awakening made the others stronger. It was as if humanity itself was evolving, preparing for something magnificent. But Zara realized they still had a choice to make. "Promise," she said to the ship. "If we choose to go with you, what happens to Earth? What happens to all the people here who need help?" "Earth becomes the heart of a network that spans the galaxy," the promise replied. "Instead of one world struggling alone, it becomes part of a community of worlds working together." "And if we choose to stay?" "Then I wait. I can wait for centuries if necessary. The choice must always be yours." Zara looked around at her family, her real family, the children who had grown up beside her, and the ship that wanted to grow up with them. "We choose," she began. But before she could finish, emergency alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Dr. Martinez was shouting into her radio, and Professor Vasquez looked terrified. "What's happening?" Samuel called out. "Military forces are surrounding the building," Elon announced grimly. "They have weapons designed to shut down electronic systems. They're planning to take the children by force and destroy the promise." Through the ship's sensors, Zara could see soldiers taking positions around Willowbrook. They had equipment that looked designed for war, not rescue. "They're scared of us," Luna whispered. "They're scared of change," Rosa added. The promise's voice filled the ship with calm determination. "Zara, your people need to make a choice. Will they embrace their future, or will they try to destroy it out of fear?" Zara felt the weight of not just her own decision, but humanity's future resting on. What happened next? "How long do we have?" she asked. "They will breach the facility in approximately 12 minutes, the promise replied. 12 minutes to decide not just their own fate, but the fate of human space exploration, enhanced children around the world, and Earth's place in the galaxy. Zara looked at her family, at the ship that had become part of them, and at the adults who had spent their lives protecting and preparing them for this moment. "Then let's show them what the future looks like," she said. "Promise, can you show the people outside what we really are?" Zara asked. "Yes," the ship replied. "But are you certain? Once they see our full capabilities, there will be no hiding." What humanity is becoming. Zara looked at her family one last time. Kai nodded, his artwork now filling the ship with moving galaxies. Luna and Rosa held hands, their shared thoughts connecting not just with each other, but with the promise itself. Samuel smiled, understanding flowing through him like light. Even baby Oliver clapped his hands, making music that harmonized with the ship's heartbeat. "We're certain," Zara said. What happened next was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever seen. The promise rose from the underground facility, but not like a rocket. She lifted gently, gracefully, carrying the building with her. Willowbrook Orphanage, with all its memories and love, became part of the ship itself. The old wooden walls blended seamlessly with the promise's living technology, creating something that was both ancient and futuristic. Outside, the soldiers stopped in amazement. Their weapons were designed to shut down electronics, but the promise wasn't just electronic. She was alive, and life finds ways to adapt and grow. "This is impossible," someone shouted over the radio. But impossibility was just another word for not yet, and not yet had finally become now. The promise hovered over the crowd, glowing with warm golden light. Instead of looking threatening, she looked like hope given physical form. Through her transparent sections, people could see the children inside, not as prisoners or experiments, but as partners in something magnificent. Then the promise began to sing. It wasn't music in any traditional sense. It was the sound of potential, becoming reality, of dreams taking flight, of a future that had been waiting for its moment to be born. Every electronic device in the area picked up the signal and joined the chorus. Phones, radios, even cars began playing the same harmony. As the song spread, something magical happened. All around the world, enhanced children began responding. Their abilities grew stronger, their connections deeper. And most amazingly, new children began awakening. Kids who had never known they were special, suddenly discovering gifts they had always carried. In Tokyo, a girl made cherry blossoms bloom in winter. In London, a boy caused all the city's lights to dance in perfect patterns. In São Paulo, twins began sharing not just thoughts but dreams. The awakening was spreading like dawn across the planet. But the most incredible moment came when the sky filled with light. The ships that had been orbiting Earth descended through the atmosphere like gentle stars, dozens of them, each one as beautiful as the promise, each one carrying the grown-up children who had made this journey before. Dr. Amanda Chen's ship was the first to land, settling softly in the field beside Willowbrook. When she stepped out, Zara saw her mother clearly for the first time, not on a screen, but in person, real and warm, and radiating the same golden light that filled her daughter. "Zara," her mother said, and her voice was exactly how Zara had always imagined it would sound. One by one, the other parents appeared. Kai's artistic abilities came from a father who could paint with light itself. Luna and Rosa's connection had been inherited from parents who shared not just thoughts but souls. Samuel's intelligence was a gift from a mother who could process the mathematics of entire galaxies. Even baby Oliver's parents came, young-looking people whose joy was so pure it made flowers bloom wherever they walked. But the most surprising reunion was Mrs. Holloway's. An elderly man stepped from one of the ships, his eyes twinkling with the same kindness that had made Willowbrook feel like home. "Hello, Margaret," he said gently. "David," Mrs. Holloway whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I thought you were dead?" "No, my dear, just waiting among the stars for the day when our work would be complete." All around them, families were reuniting. Former Willowbrook children embraced the current residents. Scientists and soldiers and government officials stood speechless as they witnessed the impossible becoming beautifully, undeniably real. Dr. Sterling, who had tried to separate the children just days before, stood at the edge of the crowd with tears in her eyes. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "I thought I was protecting them, but I was trying to protect them from becoming who they were meant to be." Elon walked up to Zara, his expression filled with pride and wonder. "You know, when I lived here as Eli Nakamura, I used to dream about building rockets. But I never dreamed about building bridges between worlds." "Is that what we are?" Zara asked. "Bridges?" "You're more than that," her mother said, putting her arms around her daughter for the first time in 10 years. "You're the future itself, choosing to become real." The promise's voice filled the air around them. "The question now is not whether you will join us in space. The question is how we will build a future where space and Earth are part of the same home." Professor Vasquez, who had been documenting everything, looked up from her instruments with amazement. "The energy readings are stabilizing at levels we've never seen before. It's as if the Earth itself is adapting to support these new capabilities." Over the next hours, as the sun set and rose again, the world watched in wonder as the impossible became inevitable. Enhanced children didn't disappear into spaceships. Instead, they became part of a new kind of human family, one that spanned from Earth to the stars. Some chose to live primarily on the space stations, becoming specialists in technologies that could solve Earth's greatest challenges. Others remained on Earth, using their abilities to teach, heal, create, and inspire. But most importantly, none of them had to choose between worlds anymore. Willowbrook became the first intergalactic family center, a place where children could grow up thinking of multiple planets as home, where enhanced abilities were nurtured instead of feared, and where families could stay together even when some members lived among the stars. The promise didn't leave Earth. Instead, she became a permanent bridge, traveling regularly between the planet and the space stations, carrying messages, supplies, and most importantly, family members who wanted to visit each other across the vast distances of space. Zara split her time between Earth and space, but she was never separated from her family again. Kai created art galleries in zero gravity where his living paintings could truly fly. Luna and Rosa became diplomatic ambassadors, their shared consciousness helping different groups understand each other. Samuel established schools where impossible things were taught as simply as reading and writing. And baby Oliver. He grew up learning to walk on multiple worlds, his laughter creating music that could be heard across the solar system. But perhaps the most important change was the one that happened in the hearts and minds of regular humans. Children around the world stopped being told that their dreams were impossible. Instead, they were encouraged to dream bigger, reach further, and believe that the word impossible was just a challenge waiting to be overcome. 1 year later, Zara stood on the observation deck of Willowbrook Station, looking down at Earth. The planet was more beautiful than ever, surrounded by the gentle lights of ships and stations where humans were learning to live in harmony with the cosmos. "Do you ever miss the old life?" Kai asked, floating beside her with a paintbrush that left trails of starlight. "No," Zara said, watching Luna and Rosa chase each other through the zero-gravity garden, while Samuel taught a group of young children about the mathematics of planetary orbits. "But I'm grateful for it. Every hard day, every moment we thought we didn't belong anywhere, it was all preparing us for this." Mrs. Holloway, now Director of Intergalactic Family Services, came to join them. She looked younger somehow, as if finding her own family among the stars had given her new life. "The latest reports show that enhanced children are being born at increasing rates," she said. "Not just on Earth, but on Mars colonies and the Jupiter stations. It seems that once humanity started thinking of space as home, our children began adapting to make that true." "What does that mean for the future?" Zara asked. "It means," said the promise, her voice now a familiar comfort in their daily lives, "that humanity is becoming something new. Not leaving its past behind, but growing into its full potential." Through the station's windows, they could see new ships arriving from Earth, carrying families who had chosen to join the expanding community among the stars. But they could also see ships departing, carrying spaceborne children who wanted to experience the world where their species had first learned to dream. "Look," Oliver called out, now 3 years old and floating effortlessly between the stars and planets in the observation dome's holographic display. "Home!" He was pointing not at Earth, not at the space stations, but at the entire view, the network of light and life and love that connected every human family across the solar system. Zara smiled. Oliver was right. This was home. All of it. The orphanage where she had learned what family meant. The stars where she had discovered what she was capable of becoming. The bridges between worlds where present and future met. As she watched Earth turn slowly beneath them, Zara thought about all the children who were growing up now, knowing that impossible was just another word for not yet. Children who would never have to choose between staying safe and reaching for the stars. The promise had been kept, not just the promise that the children would never be separated, but the deeper promise that every child deserves to become everything they're capable of becoming, no matter how impossible it might seem. And in Willowbrook Station's newest addition, a room that looked exactly like their old living room, with the same couch and the same feeling of family. 16 beds waited for the next group of extraordinary children who would grow up believing that home could be as vast as the universe itself. The story of Willowbrook Orphanage had ended. The story of humanity among the stars had just begun, and it all started with one impossible promise, that families who belong together should never be separated, no matter how far they have to travel to stay united. The end was just another word for new beginning. What an incredible journey we've taken together. From a broken-down orphanage to the stars themselves, Zara and her family showed us that being different isn't something to hide. It's something to celebrate. I'd love to know where you're listening from around the world. Drop a comment below and tell me your city or country. Are you Team Earth or Team Space? Would you have made the same choice as these brave kids? If this story touched your heart and made you believe that impossible is just another word for not yet, please hit that like button to spread some kindness today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're building a family of dreamers and believers, just like the kids at Willowbrook. There's another amazing story waiting for you right now. Click on the video appearing on your screen to continue this journey of hope, family, and extraordinary possibilities. Remember, every great future starts with someone the world overlooked. Maybe that someone is you. Until next time, keep dreaming big and reaching for the stars.